Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Several people sent me an interesting story, and I've talked before about how laws vary wildly from state to state. You might be able to do something in one state you can't do in another, and this causes some confusion among people. And people will often ask me just vaguely, Steve, what is the law on such and such? And I have to tell you, well, in Michigan it's this, in Ohio it might be that, but where are you? Oh, you're in Illinois. Okay, it could be completely different. So here's the interesting story. Can Kansas cops seize cash from legal marijuana sales in Missouri? A federal judge will decide this. Jason Tidd wrote the story for Topeka Capital Journal. It's found at cjonline.com. A Pennsylvania company is asking a federal court to return about $166,000 that it had received from marijuana sales in Missouri. The money was seized by law enforcement in Kansas while the cash was traveling to Colorado. And as many of you might guess, the police can just say, well, it's like any other civil asset forfeiture. You've got to prove the money was innocent. Now, you're going to say, but Steve, we can show where the money came from. Well, that's true in most civil asset forfeiture cases. It's still difficult. So the U.S. Attorney's Office for Kansas filed a civil asset forfeiture case last month in Wichita at the U.S. federal court there. Prosecutors for the feds claim the money is subject to forfeiture because of alleged violations of a U.S. law against manufacturing and distributing drugs. And that's the other problem we have. Many states have legalized marijuana. The feds have never taken it off their list of verboten drugs. Therefore, states say it's okay. Some states say it's not okay. But the feds have never said it's okay. And that conflict also causes problems. The driver of the van that had the money in it, though, hasn't been charged with any federal crimes in Kansas, according to the U.S. District Court records. DEA Special Agent Wheeler, who was stationed in Kansas, wrote the affidavit detailing the allegations of the case. It's $165,000 in cash. It was seized by Dickinson County Sheriff's Deputy Kaylin Robeson during a May 18th traffic stop on I-70 near Abilene. The money was in a Ford Transit van owned by Imperial Logistics. Robeson first pulled the van over on May 17th for an unspecified traffic violation, according to the affidavit. The driver told the deputy that she was a Denver-based employee of Imperial Logistics and had been given the job of driving the cash from Kansas City, Missouri, through Kansas to a credit union in Colorado. One of the reasons that this might be involving a credit union as opposed to a bank is that banks are governed by federal rules. And I've read stories about how people who operate these kinds of businesses can't put their money in banks because they fear that the feds, who still have not authorized this, might not like it. Court documents don't indicate whether the dispensary sold medical marijuana, which is legal under Missouri law, or what kind of marijuana they sold. The driver said she's on her way to Kansas City and would collect the proceeds, the cash, from the business. She was then released. The DEA then surveilled the driver, stopping at and entering multiple state marijuana dispensaries on the Missouri side of the metro, according to the affidavit. One day after the first traffic stop, Robeson again pulled over the Imperial van along the interstate in Dickinson County. The affidavit didn't specify the reason for stopping the vehicle, but since they'd stopped it previously and knew what she was doing with the van, they knew there's cash in the van, we can guess why they stopped the vehicle. Law enforcement then seized 5 bags of cash, which the driver said were from multiple dispensaries in Kansas City. A drug dog later alerted to the odor of marijuana coming from the currency. The DEA agent wrote that in the affidavit, along with marijuana is a controlled substance and illegal under both federal and Kansas state law. But of course, there's no allegations that there's any marijuana here. It's that the marijuana was probably at the business over there. Imperial Logistics is a Pennsylvania-based company. According to court records, the company's lawyers dispute claims that the money was connected to drug trafficking and subject to forfeiture. Plaintiff's claims should be barred as the conduct which generated the defendant property was lawful under Missouri state law and tacitly or affirmatively allowed by the action of the United States federal government, the company's lawyers wrote. But you'll notice that they refer to the defendant property, not the defendant's property, the defendant property. The property itself is the defendant. And I've mentioned that before, but the case will be captioned something as the United States versus $165,620 in cash. The cash is on trial. That's how weird civil asset forfeiture gets. The Imperial website advertises that they manage cash. The website says, with our targeted technology and low-profile, eco-conscious armored vehicles, we can save you time and money. And so yes, in response to many of my civil asset forfeiture cases that I've talked about on this channel, many people say, why don't they just pull over armored trucks? They're filled with money. They can make the allegation that there's something wrong going on, just seize the money. Why don't they just pull over the armored trucks? Well, this van here might not have been an armored truck, but it does sound like this is a company that has them. So while a growing majority of states have legalized medical marijuana, a smaller number have legalized recreational use. Missouri voters approved legalized medical marijuana by amending the state constitution via a ballot initiative in 2018. But Kansas is one of about a dozen states where medical marijuana remains illegal, although a bill to create a medical marijuana program passed the Kansas House late in the last session. Federal law enforcement and prosecutors, therefore, are in a tough spot. Any activity involving marijuana that is not authorized under the CSA remains a federal crime anywhere in the United States, including in states that have purported to legalize medical or recreational marijuana, the Congressional Research Service wrote in May of 2020. So there are some people at the feds who think, oh, that's cute. That state legalized that. Doesn't matter. The president has advocated for legalizing medical marijuana and decriminalizing possession. In May, Attorney General Merrick Garland told a U.S. House committee that the Justice Department will not target the marijuana industry in states where it is legal. The department's view on marijuana use is that enforcement against use is not a good use of our resources where it is regulated by the state. But of course, he's missing the point that if they go after it, they can seize money generated by it. But he's not doing that, so that's a good thing. But other people in the federal level are doing it. U.S. Magistrate Judge Kenneth Gale has set a scheduling conference for January 4th. That, of course, would be next year. Before then, the parties will discuss and file a report on the nature of the claims and defenses, all that pretrial stuff, as well as the possibility of a settlement or other resolution of the dispute. I wouldn't be surprised if they've already offered to say, let's just split it. You keep half, we keep half. It's a tax for driving through our state, 50%. The DEA National Public Affairs Office and a spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's Office for Kansas declined to comment, citing the ongoing litigation. Lawyers for the company didn't immediately respond Friday either when asked for a comment. What we have here is a Pennsylvania company who simply had their money being transported through the state of Kansas from Missouri to Colorado. And these people have seized it in Kansas by saying civil asset forfeiture, which presumably means that it's tied to illegal activities. As we know, the business it came from was legal. The business it's going to is legal. The money is simply being passed through the state. And as noted, many of my viewers have said, Steve, at what point will we simply stop armored vehicles and take the cash? We've reached that point. Because for all practical purposes, this is a commercial enterprise simply moving a large amount of money. And it was seized. And their argument is, well, we don't care if it's legal how you got it. We just think we can seize it. So, crazy case. Jason Tidd wrote it for the Topeka Capital Journal. We'll find out what happens, but probably not till next year, sadly. CJOnline.com published it. James, Bill, Matthew, and Kelvin all sent it. Thanks a lot. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Don't find fault. Find a remedy.